Welcome to Start Local, where we talk with business owners, leaders of nonprofits, and other members of our community focused on doing business in and around Chester County, Pennsylvania. Each episode will provide insight into the local business scene and tell you about opportunities to connect with and support businesses and nonprofits in your local area.
The Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce promotes trade, commerce, industry, and sustainable economic development while supporting a diverse and growing marketplace. The Chamber is proud to partner with the Start Local podcast to raise the profile of businesses and nonprofits throughout Chester County. Learn more about the Chamber at sccc.com. That's sccc.com.
Welcome to Start Local. I am Eric Goodmanson, and I'm in the podcast recording studio with my co-host, Liam Dempsey. Good morning, Liam. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Eric?
I'm doing very well. Today, we're speaking with Tony Paluch. He is the Senior Vice President and Senior Business Development Officer at Univest Bank Trust Company. Hello, and welcome, Tony.
Hello, and thanks for having me, Eric and Liam.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us today, Tony.
Well, both Liam and I are active in the local community, whether it's in our local businesses or volunteer efforts. And one thing we've observed in our travels is that everyone seems to know you, Tony. You and I met several years ago when we both served on the board of the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce. And we both served as chairman of that organization, as a matter of fact. Let me ask you, what's it like from your perspective to chair a Chamber of Commerce?
There's a lot of work involved when you're the chair. I knew that going in, but, the chamber was evolving. Cheryl Kuhn, who was executive director and still is, was rather new. Once it got rolling, I realized we would have to meet like on a weekly basis. So what happened was that Cheryl and I would meet on a weekly basis, go over everything that was taking place for the different type of events that they have under the 40 group, the actual chamber, the lunches, the banquets, you name it. Those different things, I felt I had to have a good handle on knowing exactly what was taking place, the dates, et cetera, what the audience would look like. So I learned very quickly, probably within the first month or so, that this was going to take a lot of time. So that's what we did. Once we got it on a weekly basis, we had the meetings, it just kind of flowed. Ironically, that particular year, the lease was running out for the Southern Chester County Chamber. We were in the Kennett Square proper, if you would, but in a very old, small building. And we just felt like we needed space. We needed a conference room. And we were given the opportunity to have facilities in Jennersville, which gave us all that. A couple people may have been a little disappointed in the fact that we were moving out of Kennett Square, but if you think about it, we're the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce. And ironically, my first network at noon, which they have every month, was at the Gables of Chadds Ford. And full circle, 13, 14 years later, that's where they're having their monthly ones again. So my first time going back there kind of brought back some nostalgic memories of the first time I went there.
Yeah, it must be a lot of work. The Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce, of which we are a member and a partner, is really an impressive organization. So as a member, I will thank you for your past leadership and involvement, Tony. You clearly did a lot to keep it moving. But let's switch to your work, your day job. You've worked in local banking and commercial lending more specifically, going back to 1984. And my math has that as 41 years. And that's a long time. And I mean that in an impressive, in a complimentary way. That's a long tenure. And congrats on that. But I want to ask you, clearly we respect you. That's why you're on the show. And you're a smart guy and you network with everybody. You have options. You have opportunities. What about commercial lending has held your interest for so long that you say, yeah, there's still something here for me. I'm going to stay.
Yeah. I think that in the banking world, the banks are looking for loans and specifically commercial loans. Now, there's different departments in the bank. I'm at residential mortgages, equipment financing, 100%, but commercial loans, is what they're looking for. So when I was brought up, I was a branch manager, what was then First National Bank of Chester County, and consumer lender. So I was actually a consumer lender, but when somebody was on vacation, they asked me to step in to be the branch manager. Very quickly, I transferred over into our commercial lending group. And what a lot of people don't know or remember, if you're my particular age, you do, they started to do deregulations in banking. And that came around like in the late 80s, early 1990s. So our bank wanted us to go out and meet with businesses instead of the business coming to us, which was the way. So I was a commercial lender, and the person I reported to wanted us to go out. So I thought, this is great. I could go out and take people to lunch at my favorite restaurants, or breakfast, or take them to an event, or golfing, or whatever it may be. So what happened was I was more and more going out, and then I was working late at night doing the analysis of the financial statements. And then one day the person I reported to actually said to me, Tony, you look like you're dragging. And I said, that's because I'm here all during the day, and at night when nobody else is there, I'm still in my office. A couple of weeks later, they came and said, we got a new position we're going to start, and it's going to be called business development. So at that point in time, I'm like, okay, what is it? Explain it to me. And I was always like, if you ever saw that commercial, Give It to Mikey, that was the Mikey thing. So they explained it to me and said, instead of you doing the analysis of the financial statement, you're no longer going to be a commercial lender. You'll bring it in, they'll assign it. And you may think of, there may be a certain person's personality that may fit better. And so that's what we did. I mean, it worked perfect. I mean, I go out, develop the business. And the reason I think it worked, especially in that area, to really kind of boost me and get me out there in the forefront, was a lot of bankers back then did not like going out and doing the networking. And in fact, I can remember in meetings where they kept saying to the lenders, you need to get out, you need to get out. So I was like their release valve. I was the person going out. They knew I liked that. And so that's how it worked. And so I did hold other positions we could talk about, but that just on that commercial lending piece, unfortunately the bank was sold. I moved on to Bryn Mawr Trust, was there for almost about 11 years. And they wanted me to develop the business in Chester County like I did for First National Bank of Chester County, with an emphasis on loans. Once again, we get that. Well, lo and behold, Bryn Mawr Trust looked very attractive to a bank who wanted their wealth management division, and we were sold. And now I'm with Univest, and they want that same emphasis on loans, but then everything else that I talked to prospects, clients about would be also beneficial to the bank. So, I mean, the commercial lending, I did go to commercial lending school through the Pennsylvania Bank Association at Bucknell University. But all that work going into being a commercial lender, I was only there for a really short period of time. So
it's 41 years of being a people person.
Yeah, I mean, a people person banker, but I could tell you that I was in ninth grade at Dangtown, what they call junior high, be middle school now. And we took a tour of a bank, would have been Dangtown National Bank. And when we went in there, if you can imagine, we probably walked, I would say, a good equivalent of maybe 6 or 8 blocks on a hot, humid spring day. Went to the center of Dangtown, go in, it's air conditioned. They gave us a tour of the vault where all the money was, and everybody was dressed
back when
up.
There was money in banks, yeah.
And I'm like, this is what I want to do. So since ninth grade, that's what I wanted to be, was a banker. A couple other things I wanted to be, but banking was probably at the forefront.
That's a neat background. Let me stick with that commercial lending experience that you have for a moment. If I was a business owner or a nonprofit leader looking for a bank, what should I be considering, and what should I be thinking about and looking for in a bank when I'm looking for money out there?
Well, That's a good question, because there are several different type of businesses out there, individuals, owners, entrepreneurs. Some are just looking for who gives me the best rate with the less fees. That's who I'm going to. However, there's other ones that are looking for the relationship. In other words, Univest has, as the other banks I worked for, they had a wealth management division, they had an insurance division. So there's other things we could help them with. We had in the treasury management, some people call it cash management. But if you can imagine, you have 3 or 4 different type of accounts, a payroll account, different things. We blend all that in to make it really easy for you. But I think that they got to get along with what they think is who they're going to be working with, the commercial lender. I think that's key, because I'm seeing more and more of that. Recently just had somebody who was looking for a commercial loan with the bank, had a really good setup with us. Unfortunately, that person's no longer with us. They have retired, and he wanted, another relationship manager like that. So it took me a little bit. I now have him lined up with another commercial lender that I think will be a good fit. But I just think that, one, the bank has to have an appetite and want to do the loans. And if you're in the mushroom industry, right, you got to make sure that the bank you're dealing with is into agriculture and doing agricultural lending. Univest does do that, and the banks that I was with prior did do the agricultural lending as well. So it all depends. I mean, if you grow your business, and the banks are going to want collateral, they're going to want personal guarantees. Well, your business may grow so much that you don't have the equity in your home anymore, or maybe the equity in your property, or maybe you're just leasing your property. And so then the banks, have to be willing to do accounts receivable lending, asset-based lending, on equipment, that type of thing. So you got to make sure that as you're growing, the bank's willing to grow with you as well. I mean, that's as simply as putting. A lot of times you find that the banks, you can only go to a certain size with that bank, then you have to move forward and look for another bank. But on the other end, it doesn't hurt when you're looking for, you have a loan application, go to 2 or 3 different banks, maybe go to your if you have a CPA, if you have an attorney, talk to them who he or she may recommend, and then go to 2 or 3 different banks and see which one you like best and who offers you not only the loan, but other things that may go along with it. For me, for example, depending on the size of the business looking for a loan, we offer benefits, and that's a hot item right now, is in benefits, because of all the private equity firms buying up the benefit companies. So, I know our bank has something to offer there, or commercial insurance. But just, when I go, I sit down and say, here's the term sheet. And that's what everybody's always looking for. The term sheet gives you the quick breakdown of what everything's involved. But then I also say, look, we also can provide this for you. It's something for them to think about.
Yeah, that was a really helpful for me detailed answer. I didn't appreciate all the different ways of, I think you said collateral lending and accounts receivable lending and asset, all this stuff was really interesting. So it's quite a helpful laundry list of things to think about and questions to ask. Tony, you've seen a lot of acquisitions, mergers, and dramatic growth across Chester County in the past 40 years or so. Maybe even you've witnessed a business or organizational failure or two. Tell us something about business in Chester County in the last 40 years that really surprised you.
That's a good question. I think the surprise fact was, and I didn't realize it till it happened, is like the first downward trend. When I'm really became like a banker, so to speak, when I'm commercial lending and doing business development, we had a downward trend. And, you subscribe to different type of banking newsletters, et cetera, and you saw how the recession was hurting a whole area, the businesses, the banks, the whole, whatever it may be. And let's just say it may have been, and hypothetically talking about maybe Scranton or Western Pennsylvania, Southwestern Pennsylvania, North Central, more the rural areas where there's only like one type of industry. But here's the surprising part with Chester County. In Chester County, there's so many different type of businesses and manufacturing companies, service businesses that even though we were in like a recession or a downward trend, there was a lot of businesses still did well because we have such a variety of businesses in Chester County. So to me, that was the surprising part. And all during that time, there was still, different businesses that were in need of lending. And the bank still was hitting its goals on doing the lending part.
One of the things that I think really helps this particular area weather a lot of storms like that are the support structures in place there for businesses and the community in general, whether it's different chambers of commerce, the Chester County Economic Development Council, and the list goes on. But that said, you attend a lot of those events, whether it's an economic briefing or a charity golf tournament, a networking lunch, an award dinner, whatever it might be. Your calendar's full. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite event? Or at least favorite type of event?
I would say the larger ones, and it's kind of twofold. A network at noon at Southern Chester County, there's only, let's say, 50 to 100 people to go. I'm always successful there, but at the larger ones, the Chester County Business and Industry, or the Chester County Economic Development Council. I guess the Economic Development Council, who recently hosted at Longwood Gardens. Those type events, you get a lot of centers of influence out, and you get your one shot maybe to talk to a CEO. And if you have that opportunity to talk to him or her, I'm very professional, very cognizant of their time. But I do ask, and that's the thing about when you do network, you have to ask for a possible meeting. So you just can't go wrong with the Chester County Economic Development Council at Longwood Gardens. It's such a gorgeous event, but the Chester County Business and Industry has been there as well. So those two events were probably like my favorite. I will say that whether it's a network at noon, Exton Chamber, Western Chester County Chamber, any of the smaller events, if you know what you're looking for and you have these goals set, they'll be helpful as well. And I do think they're a lot better than where you get to meet people, maybe by chance a new center of influence. It's better than how some organizations, want you to do the cold call, where you pick up the telephone and you call people. And if you can imagine how many, chief operating officers, chief financial officers, CEOs are getting phone calls or emails. It's like throwing darts, trying to hit the bullseye with your eyes closed. Whereas if I'm out to all these different organizations, not only maybe I may not meet somebody, but if I meet somebody like Eric Goodmanson and somebody's talking to you and Eric says, well, I know somebody who may be able to help you. If they're talking about like equipment financing, like it's 100% financing, you may say, I know somebody, Tony Paluch, I'll email you his contact information, and you'd be surprised how many times a center of influence, an attorney, my center of influence, I consider is why it could be insurance person, it could be, of course, an attorney, accountant, but anybody who would say, I know somebody, Tony Paluch, let me do an email introduction to you, and getting back, to be surprised how many of those emails I get.
Tony, there's a good chance that anybody in Chester County who's ever attended a local or business networking event probably saw you in the room, even if they didn't know who you were. You've made it clear that you attend so many because of the opportunity to meet new people, meet new opportunities. I wonder if you can talk about reasons beyond that. What else are you getting out of the networking event beyond the chance to meet another opportunity? And I know that might sound kind of mean and capitalistic, and I don't mean it that way, right? What else are you getting at? Is it, does it help you keep a pulse on the businesses in the area? Are you better able to explore what challenges businesses are facing, organizations are facing? Can you talk to those secondary or tertiary reasons and values that you get from attending networking events?
That's another good question. I mean, when you say you walk in a room, I teach this networking 101 course. I explain to people that when you walk in, you almost have to walk in like like you own it, like you're walking in a very positive atmosphere. You want to look the part. You don't want to go just slide into a corner or just slide to the table. You want to walk in the center. You want to talk to people, and that kind of gets it flowing, Liam. And I always tell that I had a business development team, and I told them just that. That's how you have to walk into the room. One of the things you don't want to do is walk in and just kind of slink to the side, or maybe just see several people they're all standing there by the corner talking. You go to them, you just lost your whole opportunity. I'm going in, I have goals, and some of them could be just the smallest of goal that I want at least 2 business cards. With those 2 business cards, I meet those people. I met a painter recently at an event, got his business card. He had a nice business, small business. But I gave him my card. He gave me his. And when I went back, you say, you got to do what they tell you to do. And that is, you got to reach out to them. I always say within 24 hours, send an email. Hey, it was nice chatting with you. Maybe something you guys chatted about. If I could ever be of help for you, please let me know. And so that's like the goals when I go in there. If I go in and right away, I mean, I've been in long enough to realize that I'm going to be in there talking to different people. Like I know a caterer, and so right away I asked, do you lease your current business? How does that work when you're doing catering? Do you have enough room? Do you have the equipment? And surprisingly, a lot of them will say, I need additional equipment, or I would like to probably acquire a bigger building, and there's buildings available. So what I do is I'll say, well, listen, we have specific financing for you that you only need like 10% down. And I said, in fact, let me help you. I'll refer somebody if you want, like a commercial real estate broker who's familiar with the program, but then we'll know what type of building to find that particular person. So when I talk about centers of influence, commercial real estate brokers are certainly a commercial center of influence. So there again, when I go in, as you mentioned, you've been in it long enough, you have a general idea of what their needs may be going forward.
Tony, I have to stop you right there, because when I have attended networking events, I've certainly encountered all the things you're describing. And I would go further. I would say some people actually loathe networking events because they hate small talk. They don't want to collect a bunch of business cards from strangers, and they feel awkward promoting their own business. One thing I've always appreciated about you is how genuine you are at these events. And no matter how many people are in the room, you always find the time to authentically connect with the people you're talking to. You're certainly not one of those people that immediately launches into a sales pitch before saying hi. And when you were talking earlier about how, the bank basically told you, shoo, get out of the office and get out to these networking events, it doesn't sound like you were necessarily given a lot of structure or background or training on how to network at these business networking events. So I'd like to know, how did you get so good at navigating these business networking events?
Well, that's a good question. And believe it or not, this is a true story. So when they told me I was going to do business development, I mean, literally there's some jobs that I've had that they said you're gonna head this up, and I didn't have an idea, so I would always do the research. I know when they said I was going to be doing business development, right away I'm like, okay, I'm going to be talking to all walks of life. So I started reading a lot, but back then, I didn't have I couldn't Google everything, so knowing that I would be meeting women entrepreneurs, I would read women's magazines just so, I didn't want to go in there and talk about sports. I wanted to be able to talk about if it was nutrition or something, whatever, that I'd have be just a general conversationist. But I do have, if you'd like, I could just scroll real quick. I have like the do's and don'ts of what you do. I've actually come up with this over the years, and I've done some research. So when I teach this class, I'm like, these are the things you don't do. But
it's funny that you weren't taught the class, but you are now the teacher. You are teaching the class.
Yeah. I didn't attend any of those type classes. Just a lot of research, and what works and what did not work. But it's the thing about it is that when you go to these events, I mean, I can't stress enough, if you go in with a positive attitude, and everybody there is going there for the same thing, to meet people. So when I'm talking to somebody and I can't read what their name tag says, what they do, I just politely ask, and I'm like, I may just say, I'm sorry, but I can't see your name tag. What type of business you do? And then if I'm not familiar with it, I ask them about what it is. And then I take another step further and say, well, where are you located and what's your marketing area? Now, in the session that I teach, one of the don'ts I do is you don't hand your business card to everybody. And I've seen people go in, even where I work at, I'm trying to school this individual, trying to teach him that you don't go and hand your business card, wait literally at the water cooler or where you get the iced tea, the lemonades, the coffee, and stand there and hand out your business cards. I mean, people take that just a whole different way. So, but they will take somebody who takes the time to say, what is it you do? I mean, let's face it, we're all there for the same thing. So it's okay to ask them about your business. What is Pegasus? Can you explain to me just a little bit about it? Where you're located? What's your marketing area? And sometimes, the conversation is going good, and I'm always cognizant of the time. I'll say, how can I, if I come across somebody, how would I be able to refer them to you? So I always tell people who think that way, well, first of all, they shouldn't be going. You're right. And they're not going to meet their goals. But if you're open to meeting people, trying to obtain your goals, enjoy the fact that you have an opportunity to get out of work, to go to a breakfast, lunch, or a dinner, golf outing, whatever it may be. Nowadays, pickleball. But, it's an opportunity, and that's the key. It's all these opportunities you're creating by just going.
Well, and it's not just us and not just me, certainly, who's impressed by your style of networking. Several organizations have literally asked you to teach the class, and you've termed it Networking 101, like we've been talking about here a little bit. In case our listeners didn't know, you've taught them for the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce. You've taught them for the Exton Chamber of Commerce, and I remember you taught one of those sessions many years ago to the Young Business Leader Group of the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce. It was probably over a decade ago, and to this day, people still talk about how much they appreciate your insights. So whether you wanted to or intended to or knew you were going to do it or not, you have shaped that next generation of business leaders here in the county. And I don't think it's any coincidence, but several of those youngsters are now community and business leaders today. They're not just, regular, attendees of these events. They're actually the leaders. And that's really impressive.
Thank you.
When's your next Networking 101 event?
So, I believe this is going to air, but it was going to be the Exton Chamber of Commerce. And that is going to be this Friday. I think it's the 10th or 11th or something. So that's the Exton Chamber of Commerce. They're actually providing that course with a lunch included, free to their members. And I have been asked by the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce for this December network at noon luncheon, but I do it for for the bank I work with. I've done it for several times. The prior banks that I worked for, I also did it as well, teaching different, maybe the retail group, the branch managers. I've actually had, where a department come up and said, can you just do like a private class for the individuals that report to him? But most recently, a law firm that is worldwide came to me and asked me about doing something for them. That's such a large scale. I'd really have to analyze that and see if that's something that would be advantageous for them and myself. But how this all came about, Eric, is that the attorneys who had young attorneys under the 40 group and the CPAs couldn't get their people to go out to network. So they are the ones that came to us and said, could you provide a course? And that's how it came about. So it's kind of evolved. But interesting enough, since COVID, more and more people work from home, and you're finding that if you talk to senior partners of an attorney firm, an accounting firm, real estate brokers, they're having a tough time getting their younger people to go out and actually network and mingle like we're talking about, because they got so used to doing everything via Zoom. So that's been a struggle for them. And this worldwide attorney firm was explaining to me how they have really, really good attorneys, but they need to go out and network themselves and network their firms. So it's ever evolving. But I would say, as much as technology, which I love, I'm all for AI, you need to go out there and mingle.
Tony, I consider myself reasonably adequate when it comes to in-person networking. But even as I listen to you talk about your tips and your techniques and the types of questions that you're asking, and more importantly, the way that you're asking them, I think I'm going to have to sign up for one of your networking 101 questions. And I almost wonder, can you start work on networking 201 or 301, kind of the advanced course? We've talked about chambers of commerce and your role in them over the years. And here on this show, we are just delighted with the number and quality of chambers that we have available in our area. I think at our last count, we are 8 active chambers of commerce for Chester County alone. And while each serve an important function to the community where they belong, whether it's north, south, east, west, or kind of comprehensive, I'm going to try to put you on the spot here. Is there a particular business organization, chamber or otherwise, that really stands out as a must join for local business owners? And I guess we're asking on behalf of smaller organizations which won't really have the time to join everything. They can't join Rotary and the chamber and the next group that's helping the community. Where do you point small business owners or nonprofit leaders of smaller organizations?
For smaller organizations, now I actually get that question asked. Believe it or not, a company who works with small businesses, help them with their bookkeeping, staffing, maybe direct them to benefits or insurance. They asked me, the same questions that you just asked. So I say, if you're a small business, there's a certain area that you're working, right? Unless you're going to go produce a product or something that you're selling nationwide, then you should join that local chamber. So if they say, okay, I'm located in Chadds Ford, and I'm like, okay, there's a cost to become a member of the chambers, but if you want your best bang for the buck and you got to attend, is maybe you would go to, just as a suggestion, the Greater Westchester Chamber of Commerce or the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce, just because of if your business was in Chadds Ford, the marketing area, those two would connect. They wouldn't at that point in time need a larger chamber, a business and industry, or an economic development council. However, they may grow where they're going to need the economic development council because they got so many specialized loans that can assist you. But I would say if they're starting out, just trying to build their name, who they are, their local chamber, that's who I would direct them to. For somebody like me that belongs to those different ones, I found that may not be enough, especially if I'm looking for commercial loans. I may want to join an organization where all commercial real estate brokers belong to, because they're always looking for clients to buy properties or sell properties. So I may get the best bang for the buck there. So if there's even in the construction industry, concrete, whatnot, there's the Delaware Contracting Association. So if you're going to be more specialized, maybe you get the best bang for the buck there, because if you're a cement company, you're building buildings, somebody may need you. So if it's a small business starting out, local chamber, or a specialized organization that's geared towards what you're providing.
One final point on the networking organizations. I do want to move on to something else, but you made a subtle point in your last answer that you have to be active in the chamber. And I think that it really deserves an underscore, because so many people join a chamber of commerce, they pay their membership dues, and they never show up. They never talk to anyone. They never participate, and therefore they don't get the value out of that membership investment. So it's really important that people participate and find ways that they're comfortable getting involved, or maybe find ways they're uncomfortable getting involved, just to try something new and see where they fit and see where they don't fit. Really, really good point, Tony. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me ask you, though, about your past role as a Community Reinvestment Act CRA officer.
Yeah. So that probably just to give you an idea. So I was a branch manager, commercial lender, consumer lender, business development officer, head of government banking, treasury management, sales, head of that, created a call center, executive vice president of bank, market leader. But the CRA officer was probably the toughest position I ever had, the most challenging, because if you can imagine, if a bank has a footprint, and let's say it's South Jersey, Northern Delaware, Southern Chester County, to include the Philadelphia market, the banks are required that they must lend in low to moderate income areas, what they call LMI. They must be able to and do lend to whoever would qualify, race, religion, male, female. So that's what CRA encompasses, especially like low to moderate income areas. So if you can imagine a depressed area, a lot of banks are governed by the Federal Reserve. So the government wants you to go into a depressed area, work with the community, work with the nonprofits, and help build like small business, help build that area up, if you would, for small businesses, which then you got to provide small business lending or provide residential mortgages to the area. So if there's affordable housing, we got to be able to lend to those individuals, those being the low to moderate income individuals. So have certain products for that. So at the institution I worked with prior, I was familiar with the program, but not the intricate details. If you can imagine, if you have to report to the government, it's going to be a lot of paperwork, if you would. But I was good with working with nonprofits, especially in Chester County. My own upbringing come from very blue collar, 7 children, mother, father, disabled veteran, in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. You know what I mean? So I would be considered low and moderate income if I was looking at myself when I was growing up. But having that little bit of background, I understood it. And so I was tasked with working with all these nonprofits that worked in different areas of Philadelphia, Camden, Northern Delaware, Coatesville. So those particular areas, which you can basically go to a map and see those particular areas were are classified as low to moderate income. Work with the nonprofits, provide them with grants, or inform them about possible grants through the state, which I did. But I had to join all these organizations, and a really good one out of Philadelphia is the Urban Affairs Coalition. But I went in, I didn't know a soul. And once again, as I talked in the beginning, I always did a lot of research with that. So I went in, they don't know me from Adam. I got to use my networking skills to introduce myself. And as it went on, the other members of the on the Urban Affairs Committee looked at me for like answers, as if you would. They looked for me for, okay, this is an issue. Tony, what do you think that we could do this, or how should we tackle this issue? So I worked with a lot of nonprofits I would have never worked with before. I met a lot of great people that worked in trying to help those communities, build up the small businesses, affordable housing. But it was an arena where you say, I know everybody in Chester County. This was working everywhere in Chester County with the exception of Coatesville, but going into the Philadelphia market, understanding who the nonprofits were and seeing how I could help them and work with them to better the communities and be able to provide housing, mortgages, small business loans to that community, and then report that all back to the government. So I will say that we probably were graded at the institution I worked for before I came on board at a very, very low, as if you would, as far as our CRA. And 3 years later, when we had an examination by the Federal Reserve, we scored 1 point below outstanding. So in 3 years, we turned that around. And, it's always working together with even the individuals at the bank, getting someone from every department. We had a CRA committee, and then there was buy-in. And if you have buy-in from everybody else, they provided small business lending. They come up with new mortgage products. We had deposit products. So it was a team concept. Even though I was a CRA officer, we had a CRA committee.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's an impressive turnaround in 3 years with all those different stakeholders and competing priorities to turn it around that quickly, right? 3 years passes in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
We talked previously about what might have caught you off guard or surprised you about the Chester County business community in the past 40 years. I'm going to flip the question around a little bit and ask you to gaze into the future. With all of your community experience, with all of your banking experience, with as well as the business community in our area, can you share any predictions or what you think might happen in and around Chester County in the next 40 years from a business perspective?
In the next how many years?
Well, we asked about the past 40. We'll ask about the next 40. But chances are you, me, and Eric aren't going to be here in 40 years to hold you accountable. So I'll let you answer how the question you see fit.
Well, I think the footprint, and the bricks and mortar have been laid for all the chambers assisting everybody. Technology certainly assisting. I mean, whereas our bank, we're doing equipment lending, if you would, in all 50 states now. So that's technology. So I think that, and even, a small business, a person who does small business, they could sell via the internet, So I think things happen quickly. I think that there's always going to be new banks, or there's always going to be acquisition of banks, mergers of banks. The credit unions the credit unions at one time, they were doing just residential, if you would, consumer lending, consumer deposits. They're now into the commercial aspect of it. So I think there always will be a vehicle for somebody in small business to get a loan of what they need. Um, there, there'll always be and the technology to collect your deposits quicker. Back in the day, I used to have a person come to the bank with a whole bag full of checks or cash, and if it snowed, they couldn't get there, and if it snowed on a Friday, they couldn't make a deposit till Monday. Well, all that's changed. That technology, you're making deposits every day, daily, sometimes twice a day, a lot of times electronically. So the technology is there. I just think that you always have to adapt to the changes. The banks have to adapt to the changes, which they do. And you have to look at AI to me as a positive, just like you're looking at networking as a positive. As Eric mentioned, the person who thinks, I don't want to go waste my time, because truly that person's never going to benefit, or they haven't done it correctly. But I think that there's only so many buildings in Chester County. They're only going to let you build so many buildings. There is a little bit more affordable housing that they're going to do. I just think that they'll look at an area like Coatesville, and they'll be the entrepreneurs that are smart enough to go in there and build a business in Coatesville, right? Or Southern Chester County. At one time it was like a sleepy area with just mushroom companies. Now it's evolved with small, mid, and large companies in Southern Chester County. But you have the Economic Development Council, who's always going to be there. They always have something new on the horizon as far as lending. They're always in tune to what's happening nationally, how they incorporate it, into Chester County. So I think that it'll evolve. There's not that much space they could do, but somewhere like Great Valley Corporate Center, I was at an event where they told us that the corporate buildings, as we know, probably 40% of them would be torn down and something new would take place. And you're seeing that now at the Great Valley Corporate Center with all the retail industry that's in there now, like the restaurants, as if you would, hair salon. And I understand that hair salon is just doing just a great job as far as doing well themselves and their employees. But there's all different type of shops opening up there, and they tear down the corporate center. It's just some new entrepreneur has a vision that somebody did not have, 10 years ago. And that's always going to evolve, and that's always going to keep it going. So, and as I mentioned earlier, we're so diverse in Chester County. We're so lucky. It's just not one or two industries. I think that the diversity just with the industries will keep it going and expanding. We're not one of the wealthiest counties in the state for nothing.
Well, as someone who lives and works here in Chester County, tell us about a business or nonprofit in Chester County that more folks should know about.
Okay.
It's always a tough question. Always a tough question.
Put me on the spot there. I work, I work with a lot of different nonprofits. Let me just do just a couple quick, there's an organization, Home of the Sparrow. That organization helps women with children who may not have a job, who may not have a place to live, who may need to further their education. That Home of the Sparrow helps a lot of different women, keeps them off the street, keeps them safe. Great organization that's learned to not only how a lot of nonprofits maybe look towards some government funding, they'll do it internally, if you would. So great organization. Open Hearth Inc. based out of Phoenixville, but helps all of Chester County as well. They take it one step further, where I talked about women with Home of the Sparrow. But I think that just the fact that they could take, let's just say, an individual and he's down on his last luck and doesn't have a place to stay, doesn't have enough income to eat, that they'll come in, step in, work with all the other organizations and, organization will recognize them and forward it to them. And then you have someone else like the Chester County Art Association. The Chester County Art Association, they have all these summer programs for individuals. Anybody could go there, whether you're 8 years old or if you wanted to take up something new in life and you're 6-year-old and you want to do photography, maybe start an artist, something you always wanted to do. They got so many different programs for young and old at the Art Association. And I think you need something like the arts, within the communities as well. You have the Home of the Sparrows, Open Hearth. You have the Kennett Library, which helped Southern Chester County. But something like the Art Association definitely is worthwhile for the community as well.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Paluch, Senior Vice President and Senior Business Development Officer at Univest Bank and Trust Company. Aside from bumping into you at a local networking event, where can listeners connect with you?
That's a good question. I got to be honest with you. A lot of my spare time right now, I have grandchildren. And even in the summer, I'm attending summer basketball leagues for my granddaughters, baseball for my grandson, swim team, swimming events. So a lot of my evening and weekends right now is attending my grandchildren's events. But I do like to go to the local restaurants, whether it's Downingtown, Westchester, Kennett Square, Unionville, Phoenixville. I think that there's no reason to go outside of Chester County because so many great restaurants have moved in or opened up in Chester County. So my wife and I always, on the weekends, pick a different restaurant. This past weekend, we're in Unionville. We could be in Westchester next week, Downingtown the next, Phoenixville. So there's just so many great restaurants to go to. So you could always find me, at a restaurant.
Tony, I hope to run into you soon. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom today. And, really, it was an absolute treat to talk with you. So thank you for coming out.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you to you, Eric, and thank you, Liam.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us here today. As a reminder, we publish the Start Local podcast every fortnight. That's 2 weeks. To keep up to date with what's going on with the show and to get the latest episodes directly into your email inbox, head over to our website at startlocal.co where you can subscribe to our email list. You can also get all links to everything that we talked about in today's show. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Appreciate you being a part of the community. Bye for now.